Information Commission, the meeting of March 7th, 2022. And Clerk Meadows, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, good morning. Commissioner Orth,
Here.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Here.
Commissioner Ward,
Here.
Commissioner Frohnberger,
Here.
Commissioner Roden,
Here.
Commissioner McGorty, Commissioner Mulhern,
Here.
Commissioner Bazzani, Commissioner Winkle,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Present.
Commissioner Haschak. Thank you. Staff members present include Executive Officer Uma Hinman, Analyst Larkin Filer, Clerk Kristen Meadows, and our legal counsel, Marcia Birch. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Meadows. And with that, we'll move the agenda to AB 361, remote teleconferencing action, please. I'm looking for a motion to approve resolution 2021-2211 for continued findings for AB 361.
So moved.
Motion made.
Mulhern.
Second is made. Any discussion on this item? I know conditions are changing. Does the commission wish to discuss this item now, or yes, Commissioner Ward?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just wondering that with the mask coming down, if is there any update on when we might be able to meet in person again? I know it'd be a lot more easier for our public to come in and visit us. We might get more input on these items.
And I believe our policy has been to wait for the Board of Supervisors to begin open meetings. So I'll ask Mo if she can speak to this. There, your hand is raised, so please speak to it.
Sure. There are still some additional renovations and technological changes happening in the board chambers. So hopefully those will be done this month. And then perhaps EO Hinman can reach out to the clerk of the board.
Okay. So at this time, we'll keep this on the agenda for our next meeting, but we might be updating commissioners based upon how much the Board of Supervisors progress has been made, and if they have decided to start meeting in person by the time of our next meeting. Is that okay with the commission? Okay. I'm seeing no further comment. Any comment from the public? Then let's go ahead and conduct the vote, please.
Commissioner Frohnberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Chair Orth.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
thank you for that. And at this time, we'll move to public expression. Any item on today's agenda cannot be spoken to. If a member of the public wishes to speak and you're in this meeting, just come up, unmute yourself, and we will hear what you wish to express. And Uma, I don't know who live stream is. Is that a member of the public?
That is Mendocino County, who is doing our televised.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any one coming unmuted. I wait 10 seconds. All right, I'm not seeing anyone wishing to speak to the commission today under public expression, so we'll move to our consent calendar. And I'm looking for discussion whether any items wish to be pulled. I do note that 4C is a report out, and I guess I'll make it now. The commission met in closed session on February the 7th, 2022. And we conducted under closed session contract staff evaluation. And with that, yes, Commissioner Ward,
Yeah, I'd like to pull 4B. I just had a couple, I had one question.
go ahead and ask.
Okay, Uma, the cost for bookkeeping was quite high, it was $1,000. It says in your invoicing that you used the money for the budget information and whatnot. I don't believe you did that in the past. Why the change?
So some of that,
Usually comes out of basic services.
we had to do some review and reports out of QuickBooks for the budget process this year. And also I should have noted that some questions from the auditor came up. So we reviewed the books with them. And so I should have included that in the description on the invoice.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Any other commissioners have any wish to speak to any item in the consent calendar? Then I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved, Mulhern.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second, McGorty.
Thank you. Clerk Meadows, go ahead and hold the vote, please.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Frohnberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
yes,
Chair Orth.
Yes.
Thank you. The
you,
motion
Clerk
passes.
Meadows. Okay, you might note the numbers are a little flipped today. There are no public hearing items, but to not hold people hostage, we flipped our agenda a little bit so that we can take care of issues that the public are interested in before we get into our workshop items. So let's go ahead and we're going to move forward with 7A, which is the proposed revised approach for the city of Ukiah and Ukiah Valley Sanitation District studies. And I'll turn it over to Uma.
Thank you. The City of Ukiah and the Ukiah Valley Sanitation Districts are the two remaining work plan tasks for this fiscal year. In 2020, proposals were solicited for consultants to prepare the MSR and sphere updates for both agencies. However, the cost estimates received with those proposals were substantially higher than the work plan budget. To speed up the process, the city offered to fund their sphere update. Based on that, the commission selected a consulting team and directed staff to negotiate and execute agreements with the city for funding and the consulting team for services. Since that time, the city and district and our staff have been supporting each other through coordination meetings and have assembled a good team to support development of both studies. Additionally, city and the sanitation district are working together through an ad hoc committee to vet ideas and develop plans for the efficient provision of services to those areas surrounding the city in both the near and long terms. This is very important groundwork that will greatly benefit the overall process with LAFCO and the communities surrounding the city. At the same time, the city general plan is also progressing and is now moving on a schedule that complements the MSR and sphere study completion for this calendar year. The CKH clearly supports the coordination of sphere updates with city general plan updates, and much of the data and analysis that is needed for our studies has been prepared for the general plan update. The other benefit to coordinating the sphere update with the general plan update is related to CEQA. Preparing the plans in parallel will allow for a coordinated CEQA process for both cost and staff efficiency. This collaboration and coordination supports a move from consultant prepared studies to in-house preparation, which will further build relationships and also be more cost effective. So staff is requesting that the commission approve a shift in the approach on these studies to allow staff and the agencies to work together on development of the sphere updates for both agencies. And that concludes my presentation unless there are questions.
Okay, thank you, EO. We'll be looking for a motion to approve the revised approach to the city and UV Sand District MSR SOI program studies. And I'll open it for discussion. First for our commissioners, please. Glenn, go ahead, please.
This is so critical for
one of the objectives of the Mendocino County Strategic Plan on increasing our housing stock. And, we can't do anything unless we have services. The county is woefully inadequate at being able to deliver services. So in my opinion, the city of Ukiah is going to play a very important role in annexing properties to be able to have things like street lights and sidewalks and sewer and the base and water. The basic needs for growth in Mendocino County is more likely to occur in incorporated areas than unincorporated areas. So this is one of the pivotal things that LAFCO is going to do in the coming year.
Thank you. And Commissioner Roden?
I think it's really vital to have staff, or not vital, but I think it's much more preferable to have staff be involved in working with these agencies versus having a consultant come in who doesn't understand the political and the local issues on the ground. So I really appreciate this method of going forward, and I definitely support it. And I think, I hope that this is something that can be applied not just to the Ukiah Valley, but in other areas of the county.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't disagree with the comments from the previous commissioners, but I just wanted a little more background information. December of 20, the ad hoc committee made up of you and I, Tony, I think the McCowan as well, picked Plan West through a RFP process. And I believe in December of 2020, the City Council of Ukiah also approved the $60-some thousand funding for the SOI MSR. And then all through 2021, it was reported to us that the city and our staff was working on getting the MOU up and getting the contract completed. And we spent a whole year on that. And now here we are back to dealing with the entities, the city and the Sand District. And it's just frustrating for me to watch this process, how important it was. It is very vital, but we've been sitting on our hands for over a year now, year and a half, and we're not getting anything done. And I just like to know what the costs are going to be with this joint effort by the city, the Sand District, with the CEQA costs and whatnot. We only budgeted $15,000 for this year. So I have another comment, but I wanted to at least bring that out right now because of the history of this. I'm a little frustrated that nothing ever got done. It was always reported to us that the staff was dealing with the city and the Sand District's staffing, but nothing came about. So those are my only concerns, and I'm just like say frustrated that after a year and a half we haven't got anything done, and it is so vital.
Okay, before I turn it over to Uma to answer that, I would like to say, since as chair, I've been watching the progress, the real progress that has been occurring on the ground through coordination. And coordination allows this commission and the entities being studied to move forward on several areas. Coordination and coordinated activity is far preferable to going through the process that we originally had set up. For instance, it will allow for our next item on our agenda to be considered by this commission because there is coordinated activity between both the Sand District and the city of Ukiah and LAFCO. And I don't think we would even be able to consider the next item without that coordinated activity, speaking to the supervisor's concern for allowing for additional workforce housing to be made available to the citizens of the county. So I believe that actually we have morphed into a far better process. And when you look at CEQA and the cost of CEQA that was never budgeted in our original studies, matter of fact, it was a matter of great discussion. by coordinating with the general plan of the city of Ukiah, we have folded in quite a bit of the CEQA costs to this commission and to the city and to all partners to describe any impacts to the citizens and open it up for their questions through this program review, as is very applicable, and coordinated efficiencies to reduce the economic cost in all the member agencies within LAFCO is also being accomplished through this approach. So I'll turn it over to Uma after, and then commissioners again. Uma?
Thank you, Chair Orth. I think that the only thing I really have to add to that is that we had budgeted $12,500 for the city of Ukiah this fiscal year, which we will be upon commission approval on this new direction. We would be working against that budget for the remainder of this fiscal year, and then in the next proposed budget for next year would be $15,000 to complete the process.
Okay, I'll open it back to commissioner questions. Commissioner Roden there.
What was the value of the contract that we were considering with Plan West?
The budget for the city of Ukiah was approximately $60,000 for the MSR and sphere update portion. The part that was not included was CEQA. They submitted another proposal for an initial study that was, I think it came in at about $20,000. So it was essentially about $90,000 by the time both processes were included.
Yeah, so everybody saves money if we do it this way, but we also get the benefit of, cooperation and local knowledge. And I think we're so fortunate to have such capable leadership at Mendocino LAFCO that is even capable of doing this. It's really the first time since I've been involved with LAFCO for, I don't know, like 15 years or something. So I think it's a great opportunity.
Commissioner McGort.
Oh, yes, I'm sympathetic to Commissioner Ward's frustration with working on something and then having it go nowhere. We need to respect each other's time. And too often this happens in Mendocino County, where we ask for input and then at the end go, never mind. So I don't think that's okay. And I, personally, on behalf of me, I apologize to you, Commissioner Ward, for not letting the process work. But by the same token, we have to look at our limited resources and what our internal capacity is to do things. And I think LAFCO's set up pretty well to address this with the entities that we're dealing with.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Let's see if there's other commissioners first. Commissioner Ward. Okay, we'll go to you, Jerry. Go ahead.
Thank you for those comments, Commissioner McGordy. Yeah, I'm just concerned about the cost too. Our staffing has been limited. We have increased our budgets the last couple of years, but yet we're not getting the items done. Here we had an opportunity with the City Council of Ukiah approving a $60,000 thing to get it done, where we could then concentrate on other work plans. So again, it was reported to us all through 21 that they were working with them, but there was a lot of issues between the attorneys on the MOU. And so if we weren't really getting along during this last year with getting the MOU done, how are we going to move forward in a collaborating deal? I don't see it yet, but all I hear is talk about it, but I haven't seen the results. There's been comments that there's more details behind the scenes, that there's studies and this and that, but we're not seeing it in our work plan updates and our agenda summaries. So if it's going to be moving forward, we need more information on what's going on behind the scenes. So I know things are getting done, because it has been a long time. So, but I appreciate your comments, but yeah, it is frustrating. I'd like to see this done. It should have been done a long time ago. Thank you.
And again, I will refer that there will be more information put out at our next agenda item as to outcomes that are positive through this new approach process. Yes, Commissioner Fonberger.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question about West, what was it, West Associates or West Company? Anyways, were there no baked in timelines with this contract that was executed with them? And how come it stretched out for so long? I'm not understanding this. And also, not speaking to a former person's statements, whereas I am baying to hire consultants for work that can be done in-house, I do understand the reasoning for having outside consultants that are dispassionate and are not plagued with a history of the area. And I think that sometimes is needed, and certainly in some of the contentious relationships that we've dealt with, and this one in particular, it is a good thing at times. So anyways, timelines, please.
Well, I hear your concerns, but I would note that I believe the city, through the general plan process, has consultants on board, especially through the CEQA program. But I'll let Uma speak to that, and then I'll open it up to some of the public that's here that can also speak to it. Uma?
Thank you. Yes, so the commission direction was to enter into agreements, a funding agreement with the city of Ukiah, and then after that to enter into a contract with Plan West to prepare the documents. So we were not able to come to agreement on a funding agreement with the city, so we did not enter into contract with Plan West. So that's the status.
So let me get this straight. We've spent the last year just negotiating, trying to put together a contract. There's been actually no forward movement.
No,
we spent approximately six to 8 months trying to put together an agreement that did not come to fruition. Since then, we have been meeting regularly with Mr. San Giacomo and also Wing C, who's the general manager for the sanitation district, on how best to move forward, and the kinds of and they are having the kinds of discussions that will be necessary for us to come up with spheres for both these agencies. So it's important groundwork that's being done. I realize it seems like nothing's happening on the face of it, but there is quite a bit of work that has been going on, and there has been work towards the sanitation district, MSR and sphere. So we have started the MSR process with them. And yeah, that's the update.
Well, if I beg the indulgence, so spent 6 to 8 months working out, trying to come to an agreement, and where would you categorize that the contention was really coming from? Is it an ideological thing, or is it a cost thing, or is it a sharing thing, or what? Are we drawing lines in the sand?
The attorneys for the city and our legal counsel were not able to come to agreement on the terms of the funding agreement. And then there was
I'm sorry, did you say our legal counsel?
Our legal counsel and the city's legal counsel.
And with that, I'll go to Commissioner Ignacio.
The XO pretty much covered the legal side of it for Commissioner Fonberger. One of the things I'd like to say is last week we had the executive committee meeting, and it was Craig Schlatter and Wing C. Fox that actually got me to turn around my position on this, because I feel the other commissioners' frustration, and I've expressed that in past meetings. The part of the trend, not just here, but in the whole state, is we're going back to hiring in-house planners instead of outside consultants, as the reasons being that were illustrated earlier in the comments. And I believe in the last part of 2021, we actually saw some progress as the XO, and I'm hoping the city and the SAN districts will support. there was one more piece I wanted to cover. Oh, this isn't just a simple MSR SOI update. I mean, this is a really complex and complicated process for a municipality the size of Ukiah, and there's a lot of working parts. And if you've studied the overlay plans, it's mind-boggling. And the more we can get done in-house, I'm made aware that Ukiah now, besides Craig Schlatter, has 3 city planners that it sounds like they didn't have before. So with respect to all the other commissioners, it was very enlightening to see how this cooperative process is coming together, and it appears to be set to make some definite traction going forward. Thank you.
And at this time, I'm going to call on first Sage and then Wang C to be able to speak to the commission on this matter. Go ahead, Sage.
Great. Thank you, Sage Giacomo, City Manager for the City of Ukiah. And I know Craig Slaughter is here as well. You know, I want to point to the foundation that was laid over the past year because that foundation is remarkably important for the work of LAFCO moving forward. There's been a lot of work towards that foundation that just simply wasn't in place with the municipalities and the districts, the jurisdictions, or at LAFCO. And you know, the issue that we've experienced on delays isn't isolated to just this past year, but I do think that there's been significant progress that has led to some pretty significant outcomes related to LAFCO decisions in the past year. For example, the City of Ukiah and Fire District consolidation was probably the single largest consolidation in the district in LAFCO's history in Mendocino County. You know, that was a foundation that was set by districts and cities and LAFCO working together. And from that work, we saw the benefit, you know, and that's what I think, you know, I really emphasized. And I think that UMA and staff recognize how beneficial that progress was and how quickly that outcome came about through collaboration. And I think that's what we have here moving forward with the revised proposal. Is it leaves us with a foundation to move forward, similar to what we did with the city and the fire district, to have those same type of significant results in a quick period of time under the same type of framework that was laid there. So that's what we're trying to replicate, rather than do something that, frankly, in the past, when we've hired outside consultants, when LAFCO has hired outside consultants, has not led to successful outcomes. And so I think we do have and are set up for success, and that foundation has been laid over the course of the past year. I will also just point out that the cost of where we were going down, you know, whether it's $60,000 for the city, and then on top of it, as UMA had indicated, there was an additional $20,000 or $25,000 for CEQA with the consultant. That was only the tip of the iceberg for CEQA. That was just the initial analysis related to CEQA, and the way that it was going down probably would have led to hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional expense. And you know, the City of Ukiah, while having a little bit better budget than most other jurisdictions in Mendocino County, that's not something that's going to be able to be easily replicated for small districts or other municipalities. And so I think ultimately that would have been the wrong approach to take. We found that out over the course of the past year, and what you see before you is a course correction that leads to hopefully a better outcome. So for all of those reasons, the City of Ukiah supports the recommendation by staff to move forward with this collaborative model and approach. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Wang C. Fox, please.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I agree with Sage and Commissioner Ignacio, and just want to acknowledge that you know, no one is more anxious to get this MSR SOI update done than the district and the city. So we share that urgency. We support this approach because we do feel like it's more direct than working with consultants. And there has been a lot of work done in the last year in terms of trying to undo decades of mistrust that I think Commissioner Frohnberg, you're referring to. So it takes a lot of time to even just establish, some baseline. And so while it's hard to report on the details of that progress, I assure you that there has been progress. Sometimes it feels like it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It is a process, it's not linear. But I do want to applaud Uma and Larkin in conversations with her where they aren't just trying to update the MSR and push paperwork. This is about establishing spheres of influence that aren't overlapping or not coterminous, because then what happens with those areas, it kind of has led to, or at least facilitated some of the fighting over these territories. So we're really trying to establish, who provide, there are overlapping services in the Ukiah Valley. We acknowledge that, and we're trying to figure out how to consolidate in a way that doesn't jeopardize the special districts in a piecemeal fashion. So as you can imagine, it's very complicated conversations. The city, 2 city council members and 2 board members from the Sand District have formed an ad hoc committee last year and been meeting very regularly to discuss these issues and also to discuss the issue that's on the next agenda item. So just wanted to support what everyone is saying this morning.
And with that, I'll open it up to other public members who might wish to speak on this.
Sure.
Mr. Slater, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Orth, and good morning to the commission. I'll make my comments very brief because I think all the points have actually been made already. I just want to mention something that Commissioner McGorty said at the beginning of his statement, that really we need to start thinking about how we approach planning in especially the Valley, but around the country, of course, and around the state in a more regional fashion and with collaboration in mind. I heard multiple commissioners mention cooperation, which is also important. But we found, like Sage said last year, through collaborating more, which is more of a horizontal approach, right, where we're all kind of working together towards a common goal. What we found with the fire district annexation is this way of approaching planning issues really works and has impact and is very efficient as well. Kind of get the egos out of the way and start working on actual issues, rolling up your sleeves and getting things done. And that's what we're looking forward to doing with Uma and Larkin and her team, as we did last year with fire district annexation. So that's all I want to say today. Thank you.
Okay, are there other members of the public that wish to speak to this at this time? Just come unmuted and I'll recognize you. I'll wait a little bit. Okay. Then back to commissioners. I'm not seeing, okay, Mr. Ward.
Okay. Well, I'm not convinced yet. I think this is a very complicated process that we're going through. There's a lot of variables. I don't believe 27,000 this year and next year are going to cover it. And I believe Plan West has planners on their payroll as well that could actually work with the 2 agencies to get this done. And I'd rather see our staff concentrate on getting some of the other items done and let the consultants work this out. The other issue that I guess I could bring it up now and not maybe at our work plans when we talk about work plans, but there was a discussion that the city may be annexing all of the Sand District and the Sand District may go away. So if that's still true, that was discussed in the past, then what's going to happen to their SOI and MSR if they don't even exist? But anyway, I'm not in favor of this. I'd rather see the Plan West program go forward.
Well, then it's an appropriate time. Do we have a motion to approve the revised approach to city and the Ukiah Valley Sand District MSR SOI program studies approach?
So move.
Mari,
so move.
Second, Mulhern.
we have a motion and a second, and further discussion will be to the motion. Uma, do you wish to speak to the motion first? Would this help staff move forward versus the Plan West approach again, just quickly?
I believe so, and I think that as Sage Wingsey and Craig noted, this builds really important relationships for between the agencies and with LAFCO, and having all the parties working together to develop plans for the development around the city in particular is going to be much more beneficial in the long run.
I'll open the discussion up to commissioners on the motion. Okay, not seeing any, I'll open it up to the public to speak to the motion. Any public member? Just unmute yourself, I'll see it. Okay, Clerk Meadows, would you call the question, please? Roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty,
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
No.
Commissioner Frohnberger,
No.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Chair Orth.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank you.
commissioners.
Chair Orth,
Yes,
since it passed, could we have staff then give us real detailed updates in the future, each meeting, of what the progress is for each of the entities, so we know that things are happening actually, rather than just saying that they discuss things and that's it?
Yes, we will.
go ahead, Uma.
Yes, we can include a more detailed report on the sphere updates for both agencies.
Thank you.
Chair Orr.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Ignacio.
As in the packet, we have a flow chart there, which was helpful for the presentation. If it's at the commission's pleasure, perhaps in the next month's update, we can ask the report to include some milestone dates so we can anticipate some progress as well.
Thank you for that. Any further comments by either commissioners or public or staff? Okay, seeing none, the vote has been taken. It has been passed, so we'll move to the next item, which is 7B, the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District Sphere of Influence Review and Out-of-Agency Service Request, and I'll turn it over to Uma.
Thank you very much. This is being brought forward at the direction of the commission, and our analyst Larkin Filer will be presenting this item.
Good morning, commissioners. The staff report for this item starts on page 23 of the packet, and this is just a brief summary of that report. There is no clear record of the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District's 1984 SOI boundary, and the district's SOI needs to be updated for the commission to consider applications to annex or add areas to the district boundary. The district is frustrated because they have received new service requests for areas outside their boundary, and the MSR SOI update process is delaying development needing sewer instead of septic. Annexation takes 6 months to a year roughly, and when there is high pressure for development, a property may be built with on-site services instead of waiting for public services, which is the case with the Big Daddy Garden Supply on Ford Road. LAFCO law allows for an extension of public services outside an agency's boundary by agreement in limited circumstances and is subject to future annexation or an existing public health and safety need. In the Ford Road Old Masonite area, there are multiple local agencies that offer competing services with overlapping or unclear spheres. This includes the City of Ukiah, the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District, and the Millview County Water District. In the absence of updated spheres and with a duplication of service providers, the decision of which agency should serve a property becomes a battleground before the commission instead of being based on good planning principles that are implemented in establishing appropriate agency spheres. There have been multiple attempts to update the district and city SOIs, which are nearly 40 years old, and there is historical conflict between the agencies that is better resolved by the agencies than the commission. Completion of the district and city MSR SOI study is a high priority, And we have a good team of agency staff ready to dig in and develop solutions to reach agreement on these longstanding issues. Interagency collaboration takes time and patience, but will ultimately yield more lasting results to the benefit of the public. The district and city have drafted a potential approach, which is on page 25 and 26 of the packet, to provide sewer service as an interim step before annexation to the Ford Road and Masonite properties. And we support continuing to work together on the feasibility of this option. And I wanted to note that this item is for discussion today and would require a future item for the commission to ultimately make a decision about the proposal. And that does conclude my presentation at this time, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, opening to the commissioners, please raise your hand if you wish to speak to this issue of addressing a out of agency service agreement between the parties and working on same to bring back to the commission for further consideration and action. Okay, yes, go ahead, Commissioner Roden.
I was wondering if the staff could please clarify on page 25, the difference between 1 and 2 there. I don't, maybe it's a time, one's more, in number 2 is into the future and number 1 is short term, but I'm not clear. They seem contradictory to me.
Okay, Uma, you're muted. Oh, Analyst Feeler, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Uma, were you going to speak?
No, I think she was prepared to have you.
Oh, okay.
We can go to Uma if necessary, but go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I will say that this is still being reviewed at a staff level, and we do have city and district staff on the call also that may be able to address this better. But my understanding is that the proposal is based on an out of area service agreement application made by the city. And then that application would be supported by reaching agreements as outlined under 2 and 3. Which would basically allow for the sanitation district to continue to provide the service by contract, though the LAFCO consideration would be actually authorizing the city to provide that service. And then the second piece of that would be reaching a concurrent agreement with Mendocino County on tax sharing for the area. But again, I welcome the city and district staff to weigh in if I'm not correctly characterizing that.
Okay, I'll first, because it was requested for further information before going back to the commission, I'll reverse order. Wing C. Fox first and then Sage.
Thank you. Yes, so we had a conversation at the ad hoc committee meeting on this issue last Thursday, so it is still under development. I think that the purpose of bringing this to the commission right now is because of it linked to an updated sphere of influence. So I think what we want to do is pursue this framework. The next step would be for the city and the district to dig in on that number 2, which is the agreement. And I know the district feels very strongly that any annexation plans wouldn't be piecemeal, and we've heard direct support from the city on that. And so it is, it's an area of interest for 3 agencies, as you heard. We want to support getting connection in that area so that they aren't developed with septic. This is kind of the best proposal we've come up with so far that still requires some work. But if the commission kind of is flat out saying, we won't support this framework until the spheres of influence or SOIs are updated for the city and or the district, then we would not spend all that time negotiating the contract, which we hope is not the case.
Thank you, Sage.
Yeah, thank you. So I just to reinforce the comments that have been made by Wing C, that we do believe that this is the best framework to satisfy the interim need to provide services in this area. It certainly doesn't, preclude the additional discussions moving forward related to the MSRs and SOIs as we move forward. But under, there's the immediate need that has been expressed. We know the commissioners heard last meeting about that immediate need. Certainly, we don't want to see septic, put into an area that really could be served with a better service. Eventually, we do believe that this area needs to be and have all of the services provided to it as it builds out that a municipality can provide. But this allows us to be able to move forward to provide a service. It comes forward with, as Wing C indicated, under the auspices of an out-of-area service agreement. But within that out-of-area service agreement, number 2 and 3 are the additional layered components to that out-of-area service agreement that allows there to be hopefully agreement between the sanitation district and the city about how those areas would be served, and then also an agreement with the county of Mendocino with regards to how those areas would be served. So that when future annexation comes before the commission, all of those items are worked out in advance. It makes that that final application in the future much easier, and we're not left to fighting over jurisdictional control through the annexation process. So, and then in the interim, it allows us to satisfy the necessary services that are really required for orderly development in this area. So I'm confident that if the commission, is agreeable to this framework that would allow for an out-of-area service agreement to be filed by the city with, again, limited terms of that out-of-area service agreement related to these areas, not just carte blanche out-of-area service for every area, but at least limited to these immediate needs. I think it is a great interim solution and provides the best framework to be able to provide for the development that will likely move forward in a piecemeal way, in a way without the appropriate services. Whereas this will provide for the services in the best capacity moving forward.
Thank you. And we're going to move to commissioners now, and I'll come back to public afterward. We'll start with Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, I'd like to hear the opinion from Ernie Whiff before we move on.
The opinion from who?
Ernie Whiff from the Sand District.
All right, Ernie, you've been asked a question or at least comment on this process that we're proposing to move forward with, if agreed to by the commission.
Thank you, Commission. We also, besides the area that's been discussed here on this item, there's also several other properties that are in plan with the Mendocino County that have sewer lines adjacent to the properties or on the properties that would like to have sewer rather than septic. So I just wanted to throw that in, that this is not necessarily this one particular area that is that we're getting pressure to provide sewer. There's also several other ones, and I guess that to Jerry's comment, the sphere of influence for the district is I feel pretty important because of the fact it would hopefully resolve some of the other problems that we have that are in areas that are far enough away from the city that it's going to be years, maybe never, before they actually annex into the city. So that I don't think that the sphere of influence necessarily is just for these areas that are under discussion right now. And I think we're in complete agreement. I reiterate Wing C's comment. We're in complete agreement, but we really want to make sure that there's not that there's an understanding that this annexation or future annexations don't create financial hardship for any of the special districts involved in the areas to be annexed. And I feel that's pretty important because of the fact that, you know, there's been discussions about a lot of other options that we will follow. We just haven't had time to work through all of those. So, you know, the city and district are working together to try to come up with the best plan to service our community with sewer, and hopefully with the water districts also involved to have a more regional sewer and water system, or agreements that can allow that. So.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Glenn, then Matt, then Candace, please.
Just for my own edification, so the area between Ukiah city limits and Masonite right now, is that part of the sanitation district, like the Brush Street Triangle and such?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the Brush Street Triangle is, Ford Road is not.
Okay, so there's a lot of area that's nearby this proposal that should also probably be looked at some point.
Well, that's again, the purpose of the SOI studies moving forward with the parties. So that's the work that's ongoing to define those areas of service. Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. So I've actually had some experience dealing with this in the past in other counties, but it's not typically a third-party agency that actually develops the out-of-service area agreement. Why exactly is that being undertaken by the city if the sand district is going to provide until and if the area is eventually annexed by the city? Why would the city be taking over that responsibility and drafting that for the sand district and at this point?
The sand district's sphere of influence cannot be determined, Matt.
Correct.
That's the reason to try to break the logjam and actually provide these development service in a reasonable amount of time. That has been the solution, that since the city's sphere of influence encompasses this area, have the city make the application with the sand district providing the service, because all the lines within these areas are sand district lines.
I understand what you're saying, but is this just being done because it's easier to have the city do it and they have a perceived ability to do it better? Because I mean, I don't understand why you're ceding the writing of the outside service area agreement to a different agency. Is it so that when and if this area is annexed, that it's more in line with the city's requirements, or what?
The district has been told that we cannot provide out of area service agreements, as our sphere of influence does not encompass those areas, which.
Well, that's correct. But actual outside
please, let's you've asked a number of questions, and there are other people.
I'm asking the same question. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, hopefully this discussion will continue through the other two who wish to make comments. Candace, go ahead, then Wednesday, and then we'll go back to you, Matt.
Thank you. I'm Candace Horsley. I'm on the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District Board. I just wanted to comment for those that have not been involved, that back in 1995, there was something called the Ukiah Valley Task Force. And the whole purpose was to bring all these little small districts, the city together to provide smooth and continual service, whether it was water, sewer, whatever. So 27 years later, I feel that we finally have reached a point, after many disagreements, lawsuits, issues, we are finally at a point that we're working together. There are agreements that are being worked on to provide the dignity of the agencies, the small agencies, and keep them intact until such time as there may be a whole company consolidation of some sort, and also to provide the best customer service. So asking these people to develop with septic systems when sewer systems are only a few feet away. We have been working together to try to attempt to provide the sewer system. So we would really appreciate the assistance of LAFCO in helping to provide these services and to recognize that these smaller districts in the city are working together and coming to agreements, hopefully. I mean, it's at the beginning, but for the first time in 27 years, everybody is cooperating and trying to provide stable service and development that makes sense and that is looking to the future. I think Wing C can speak to why we're working with the city, why the city is providing the out of service agreement and the Sand District is actually providing the sewer service. Thank you.
So we'll go to Wing C, then Sage, then Matt.
Thank you, Chair Orth. I think it really comes down to trying to figure out challenges, right? Where we just spoke about wanting to get the MSR SOI done. Ernie just referred to areas of interest outside of Fort Road and Masonite. So we're trying to get that done, but that realistically isn't going to be done that soon as we would like. And in the meantime, there's a lot of pressures in this particular area, Fort Road, Masonite area. So we're trying to parallel tracks to be as efficient as possible to get the bigger picture done, but also to have a quicker path towards this specific area. And we have been in communications with the city quite a bit. Again, this is an area that there have 2 applications or pre-applications for annexation. It's also an area of interest for the Sand District. And so rather than try to fight it out, we are trying to figure out a way to work together. And I think right now there's still agreements that the Sand District can't commit to because it hasn't come before a board. But the idea is that if the city does annex eventually the Sand District, it makes sense that this area is part of that annexation. But we obviously want to make sure that in this process that the special districts aren't in financial hardships through that process. So if the Sand District were to directly apply for the out of area service agreement, it isn't working in line with the conversation, the larger conversation we're having with the city, which is the city annexing the Sand District completely.
Thank you.
And Sage, go ahead, then back to Matt.
Yeah, thank you. I think Wing C really summed up the reasons behind it. The other thing that I want to point to with Candace's statement is that this framework, the draft proposal and the framework for these out of area service agreements, if LAFCO buys into this, it facilitates coordination, right, as opposed to fighting. And any other type of framework in my mind that I've been able to think of leads to, it just plays right into the previous mistrust, between districts in the city. It leads to, it leads to fighting, and this leads to collaboration. And that's why, I think we're all behind it from the city side, the sanitation district side, and moving forward is we want to see processes that lead to collaboration that come before LAFCO, as opposed to the jurisdictional fighting that we've seen happen. That has really, been the real issue towards stagnation with LAFCO and your ability to do the work that you need to do in promoting good quality services in our community. So hopefully this framework will lead to those indecisions, both in an interim and in an end, to get us to quality services, without urban sprawl and piecemeal development in our valley. So again, City of Ukiah, we strongly support this draft proposal for framework and hope that the commission will, at least at this point, give it a green light to move forward for further development, so we can bring forward a solid solution to the commission for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to Matt first to see if his questions have been answered. Then Wing C, we'll go back to you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Wing C, for actually finally getting to the answer on that. I appreciate that. I thought it was a relatively simple question, but it sparked a lot of debate. Let me let me tell you one thing. I do support this. I think that outside service agreements are important. I've worked with them in several districts, written them myself. It's not a hard thing to do. The Sand District could do it for themselves, but I understand the reasoning why now. And that's all I was looking for. But the city is actually preparing this document. I do support these areas being able to connect to sewer services because, frankly, putting in septic systems in many of these areas will preclude actual business from being done. And they're not the most efficient way of dealing with the byproducts of business. So thank you, Wing-C, for your comments, and I cede back.
And thank you. It's really important that commissioners ask these questions. I want to make sure that no commissioner feels that there's a reason not to ask a question. It's important to, especially when we have people present who can help illustrate the answers to them. And so Wing-C, go ahead.
Thank you. So those of you who know me, and most of you have only met me in 2 dimensions and not in 3 dimensions in person, but those of you who do know me know that I'm pretty direct. And so I do want to say that this relationship that the city and the Sand District is forging is a very delicate process. And so I don't want to understate or overstate the work here, right? This framework could blow up if the Sand District and the city can't reach an agreement on it that we can bring back. It could blow up in and of itself. But right now, what we're asking for is for the commission to consider the framework to facilitate this very delicate process and relationship, and to allow us to give it a try and to hammer out the agreement. On the one hand, it's simple, but on the other hand, it really isn't. So again, I think what we're trying to do is work together, but acknowledging that it is complex. There's a long history that we're working through, and that this particular framework is for this area of interest that we're hoping we can replicate for work going forward. So it is a very important process that we're bringing forward right now that we hope to really show not only to the commission, but to the Valley and to the public that we had an area of success where we could come together in a very contentious area and work something out that makes sense for the Valley.
Thank you. And at this time, the question is to provide direction to staff to work with the parties in continuing this process that will eventually lead to a consideration and action by LAFCO in a future meeting.
So moved.
Yes, go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea and I support it. And I move.
Lauren.
Is that a first and a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the motion is to provide the direction to staff to move forward on this proposal and bring it back to the commission when needed. Let's see, should we vote on this motion then? First of all, any comments, further comments or questions? Yes, Matt.
Like the last item, I'd really like to get concise updates on this. And I think that we need to keep the timeline short because some of these properties have been sitting in basic limbo for a very long time, reduces productivity and the ability for them to do their work. So thank you.
Okay, and I'm sure Uma, you can manage that. Yes?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Clerk Meadows, and call the motion direction to staff.
Just a point of clarification, we actually don't need a vote on a direction, Chair.
Okay, then does anyone speak against the direction to staff? Okay, seeing none, I believe direction has now been given. So with that, we will move to our next slide. Thank you all for coming and speaking to this matter. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commission.
Okay, the next item, it will be let's see, 7C, proposed amendment number 2 to the Executive Officer Services Agreement, and I'll turn it over to Uma.
Thank you. In 2016, the commission entered into contract with our firm, Hinman and Associates Consulting, to provide executive officer services, including the executive officer, analyst, and clerk positions. Since that time, there's been one rate increase approved by the commission in 2018, and no increases have been requested since that time. So we are requesting a change in our hourly rates. These would go into effect with the new fiscal year, so starting in July 1. And those rates are included in your agenda packet on page 32. This would be the second amendment to our services agreement, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I will add actually that the executive committee did consider this at their March 2nd meeting and have recommended it for consideration to the full commission. Thank you.
That is correct. The executive committee did meet and we so recommend. So discussion, commissioners.
I move approval with moving forward with the recommendation.
Schrumberger, second.
Second, any discussion by the commission? Any discussion by the public? Just unmute yourself and come forward. There's no one in the waiting room, correct, by phone, Uma?
That is correct. No one in the waiting room.
All right, thank you. Then go ahead, Clerk Meadows, and call the item.
Okay, Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
Yes.
Commissioner Frohnberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty,
Yes.
Chair Orth.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is agenda item 7D. This is to proposal to establish service rates, and I'll again turn it over to Uma. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to share a screen so that we can look at a PowerPoint for this one. Okay, so this is agenda item 7D. This starts on page 36 of your agenda packet. Currently, revenue to support LAFCO operations is based solely on apportionment fees, with applications processed at cost on a zero-sum basis. At its March 2nd meeting, the executive committee heard staff's proposal to establish weighted service rates to recover a portion of overhead costs and long-term planning costs that would be applied to services subject to the fee schedule. So the all activities that are subject to the fee schedule include applications and requested commission proceedings and sphere amendments. So again, this would recover portions of the operational overhead and the work plan costs. In developing a methodology for establishing these service rates, we reviewed similar sized LAFCO's methodology, both for contractor and employee models, all of which included a combination of staff rates and an overhead or multiplier. We based our calculations on the draft preliminary 22-23 budget and the proposed staff rates that were considered under our last item. The methodology consists of two steps. One, calculating the hourly input rates and the average rates for the fiscal year, or average time, staff time for the fiscal year, and then to calculate the hourly service rates per the budgeted position. So this was input one, the hourly staff rates. So again, this included the proposed rates for next fiscal year. And then we added the estimated hours that were included in the next year's budget. The second input is the development of the hourly overhead costs, and those were calculated by the sum of the operations and half the work plan costs divided by the total staff hours estimated for the next fiscal year. So that gave us a calculated hourly overhead cost of $50.47.
Uma, would it be all right, Chair, to interrupt for clarification?
Yes, go ahead, Mar.
Why, what's the rationale for half of the work plan hours?
That's what's typically used by other LAFCOs. They only calculate half of those costs for the work plan. I didn't see any full work plan costs associated with their methodology, so we went ahead and used the half of those costs.
You have any idea about the rationale?
I might speak to that. Just that the work plan is a LAFCO work program, and budget works off of the 3-member groups paying for LAFCO operations. So this is a cost recovery way, but I would believe the rationale would be related to the fact that LAFCO, through its member dues, pays a portion of the work plan costs. Uma, am I correct, or am I misreading it?
No, I believe that's correct. In the past, there have been some of the LAFCOs, instead of doing an overhead costs, summing the operations, including a portion of that, they just focused on the work plan and did kind of a work plan fee on top of their application processing fees. But in talking with those executive officers, they've all moved away from that and have embraced this methodology instead.
Okay, Mari, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, Uma, move on.
Thank you. To calculate the proposed hourly service rates is simply the sum of the staff rate on top of the hourly overhead cost. So we are proposing hourly service rates of $160 for the executive officer, $125 for the analyst, $90 for the clerk, and $275 for legal. Similar LAFCO service rate charges are on the bottom of your screen. So for executive officers, they range from $150 to $204. For the analyst, $75 to $158. And for the clerk, $60 to $150. So to summarize, based on the 2020, 2021, and the year-to-date application activity, we estimate that the potential revenue from establishing these service rates would be approximately $20,000 in the next fiscal year. For next steps, service rates require a public hearing. So what we're requesting today is direction to staff for any changes to the methodology, or to go ahead and schedule a public hearing for consideration of these service rates. And then finally, we would update the fee schedule. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, so we'll be looking for a motion to set a public hearing to adopt the service rates and update fee schedule. And I would believe that would be for our next meeting, which is April 4th. Is that correct, Uma?
That is correct, yes.
So that would be the action. Meanwhile, let's go ahead. I open it up to commission for discussion. Yes, Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Uma, you have the overhead for the legal counsel up to $225. So will our legal counsel then just bill that amount, or we keep it? How does that work?
So the overhead costs, so that $50.47 that's added to the staff rates would be used by LAFCO to offset the overhead and work plan costs. So staff rates would remain the same. Legal counsel would receive $225 an hour for his services. Executive officer would be $110 for my services, but that $50 would be recouped by LAFCO to offset the cost. So eventually it would be used to could be used to decrease apportionment fees or to expand the services provided by LAFCO.
Further questions from commissioners? And we'll look for a motion, please. That motion would be to set a public hearing to adopt service rates and update the fee schedule. That public hearing to be held on April 4th at our next regularly scheduled LAFCO meeting.
I would make that motion. Fronberger.
I'll second it.
Okay, any further questions or discussion by the commissioners? Any members of the public wish to speak to this item? Just unmute yourself and come forward. I'll wait 10 seconds. Okay, seeing none, Clerk Meadows, go ahead and call the question.
Sure. Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner Fronberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty,
Yes.
Chair Orth.
Yes, and thank you.
Thank you. The
Clerk
motion
Meadows.
passes unanimously.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is 7E, Senate Bill 938, a potential letter of support from the commission. And EO Hinman, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Senate Bill 938 is being sponsored by CALAFCO through Senator Hertzberg. And it is intended or seeking to amend the protest provisions for LAFCO initiated dissolutions. So this work is moving through, and basically what was being requested by CALAFCO at this time is a letter of support that we can submit to the legislative bodies for consideration. So the background on this starts on page 42 of your agenda packet with the draft letter, and then the fact sheets for this bill on the following pages. So what staff is requesting is authorization for chair signature on the support letter for submittal.
Okay, so the recommended action will be a motion to approve the support letter for chair signature on SB 938. I'll open it up for discussion. Yes, Mr. Ward.
How long has that Hertzberg been a senator? It seems like it's 40 years. Didn't LAFCO, he started LAFCO back in what, in the 1980s or something? I don't remember, but he's been there a long time. Could you just give me a quick overview of how that would change our process? We just went through that process a few months back. How would it change?
For LAFCO initiated dissolutions, there is a much smaller threshold for the protest hearings. So typically when we go through a protest hearing for an application, there's a 25% threshold. If we receive protests from 25%, then it kicks it into an election. The LAFCO initiated dissolutions are currently at 10%. So this bill will make that equal. It will bump it up from the 10% threshold to a 25%. So make it consistent with the current protest provisions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Roden.
Yeah, this whole push toward changing the threshold for a protest was, the impetus was this report by the Little Hoover Commission that came out of, I don't know, 7, 8 years, I can't remember. But I read that report and I recommend that everyone read it. It has to do with districts and the issues around districts and problems, and were uncovered by this Little Hoover Commission report, and recommendations were made. And so this bill is to implement one of the recommendations that was in the Little Hoover report. So I think it's a great move forward. It would have happened sooner if, but for the pandemic. And I would move the recommended action.
Second.
Motion made and second. Further discussion by commissioners? Any members of the public wish to speak to this? Just unmute yourself and come forward. Seeing none, Clerk Meadows, go ahead and roll call.
Sure, just a quick question. I wanted to confirm, Commissioner Ignacio, did you second?
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead and call the question.
Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner McGordy,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner Frohnberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
Yes.
Chair Orth.
Yes, and thank you. All right, we're gonna jump back in our agenda numbers to 6A. This is our workshop item to hear the preliminary fiscal year 2022-23 budget and work program proposal. And I'll turn it over to staff. Uma?
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share a screen again.
Hey, Uma, just wanted to let you know that's this coming Friday on your slide there.
Oh, yes, thank you.
It was on the last one. I thought, well, I'll let it go.
I was preparing 2 agenda packets at the same time and I got the dates transposed. Thank you for bringing that forward. Okay, so this is the LAFCO budget development. It is March 7th today. So for the CKH lays out the requirements for development of the annual budgets. It does specify that the budget should be greater than or equal to the previous fiscal year, although they do provide a provision that if a reduction in that does not affect the commission's ability to carry out its purposes. The annual budget includes a work program, which is a narrative of the expected work products in a fiscal year. And that includes the basic services, the services and supplies required for the operation of the office, and the work plan, and any special projects. The fiscal year 2022-23 preliminary budget includes both the revenues and expenses anticipated for the next fiscal year. As a reminder, our budget is primarily funded through apportionment fees. That is a formula that is set by state regulation, although they do have a provision for alternate formulas, and is based on a 1/3 split between the county, the combination of the cities, and a combination of the special districts. It is established by the commission with the adoption of the annual budget, and then those funds are collected by our county auditor on behalf of LAFCO. Other revenues include interest from our accounts, our bank accounts, and the application fees, which are currently a zero-sum basis. Expenses include the basic services, which consists of the staffing by the executive officer, the analyst, and the clerk. The services and supplies, again, for office operations, and the work plan, which includes the municipal service review and sphere updates. Again, expenses for application processing are paid at cost by the applicants, so that is zero sum. The preliminary work program is included in your agenda packet on page 56. It is funded through the basic services and work plan budget accounts. The staffing that's included in the work program is for policy development, for budget development, commission and committee meetings, and for carrying out commission direction. It includes the administrative duties, responding to public inquiries, and overall office operations. The work plan is a tentative plan for the future work products to meet the state mandates. So again, that consists primarily of the municipal service review and sphere updates. I want to talk a little bit about the work plan. That has been a topic that has been brought forward on a number of occasions, and I wanted to touch on that a little deeper this year. The CKH, or Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, requires the preparation of MSR and sphere updates for all agencies by January 2008 and every 5 years thereafter for those agencies that provide municipal services. Our local policy specifies those municipal services to apply to water, sewer, fire, and police. The scope of a municipal service review and sphere update can vary from abbreviated, which will meet the mandate, to comprehensive, which is a much more significant effort, substantial effort, but also promotes good planning. In 2012 through 2018, the first round of sphere updates were prepared, and the focus was on an expedited process to help the commission catch up on its state mandates. Those were abbreviated because of that necessity for timeliness and also for limitations on budget. In 2017-18, we developed a rolling work plan to help us prioritize the MSR and sphere updates. And that prioritization was based on first whether an agency provided municipal services as defined under our local policy, what the date of the last sphere update was, so trying to prioritize those that were more outdated, and also a consideration of any known issues or development pressures. And then finally, as the CKH supports any coordination with land use plan updates, such as general plan updates. The scope of the studies was essentially determined primarily by budget, but also by the agency services. So whether it's a single service agency or a multi-service agency, and any known issues that were being faced by the district or city. There's a couple of approaches. There is the in-house preparation of the municipal service review and sphere updates by staff, or there is the option to use outside consultants. And then finally, there's the budget development based on the scope and the approach. So we're now in our second round of sphere updates. It should be acknowledged that there are some significant issues facing our county. We have drought, we have water supply issues and distribution issues. We have fire issues, and we also have housing pressures. It's important to note that LAFCO determinations in these municipal service reviews and sphere updates are used by local agencies and state agencies. A comprehensive study, sorry, there's someone at the door. A comprehensive study is going to be much more useful to the commission in helping to make those significant, addressing those significant issues. There is a process that we can do that we've been discussing in amongst our staff, that the comprehensive studies with subsequent focused reviews would be beneficial. The scope of the studies, as you can see in this, would be good and fast, but not cheap. So that would be like a consultant prepared document, or good and inexpensive, but not so fast, which would indicate the in-house preparation. So again, a lot of coordination goes into the in-house preparation. And while we have much cheaper rates than the consultant prepared document, it would be, sorry, I'm distracting here in the office. I'll move on to the preliminary work plan for this next fiscal year. We are proposing that these documents be more along the comprehensive approach, and that is in recognition of the development pressures within the Ukiah Valley. The city of Ukiah and the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District were initiated in this fiscal year. That assumes the initiation of both of those this fiscal year. And it's important to recognize that the drought is emphasizing critical water issues. So we have included the water districts in this next fiscal year. We propose to split the water districts into the coastal water districts into a single MSR and the inland water districts into a separate MSR. Please note that no CEQA is included in these estimates. Let's see. So the proposed work plan contingency, this is a new item for consideration with this budget. This would be the accumulation of unused work plan budget that would roll from fiscal year to fiscal year. The intent is to provide for flexibility in implementing the work plan, and in recognition that there can be delays in study development for coordination to occur, or for delays in receiving information from the agencies. It would act as a buffer for studies that extend multiple fiscal years. So when we recommend a budget for the work plan in any one fiscal year, it is just for that fiscal year and not necessarily for the preparation of the whole study. And that again is recognizing that certain studies will go beyond the June 30th end of the fiscal year. This would, having a buffer would also allow for shifts in approach. If we get into a sphere update and there are issues that arise that make it more suitable for a consultant prepared document, then we would have some ability to make that shift without impacting the budget. And then also it would allow for some CEQA document preparation. To date, our budget has not allowed for any CEQA, and so the policy or the approach that the commission has taken in the past is that the CEQA that spheres would be adopted coterminous, or at least that in such a way that they would still be, qualify for an exemption through CEQA. That's not necessarily the best planning. So this would allow some leeway or some buffer for us to do some CEQA work for MS sphere updates in the future. Other questions on the work plan before I jump into the preliminary budget numbers?
Mari, did you have a question? Mari, you're muted.
Well,
there you go.
You know, I thought that there isn't a consensus among LAFCOs about whether CEQA is required for a non-coterminous sphere update. So I thought from the city of Ukiah's legal opinions that they obtained that there's some disagreement, and so I just wanted to throw that in there. I mean, we may not need the, I guess what I'm saying is maybe that money might not have to go to CEQA, and maybe that's an open question right now, that's all.
Thank you for that comment. You're correct, there is no consistent approach amongst all the LAFCOs for CEQA. Our legal counsel has, his belief is that CEQA must be applied to sphere updates to consider all of the proposed development that would occur in that area. It is clear that sphere updates are subject to CEQA though, so it must be addressed in some form. So I will get into the preliminary budget, and I will note there's a correction in your agenda packet on page 51. On the screen in front of you are the correct numbers. The estimated revenues proposed for this next fiscal year would remain at $265,000 in apportionment fees. The proposed operations expenditures would be $263,800. That's primarily an increase due to the work plan, although there is a increase to basic services in part due to the proposed rate or the staff rate increase. So this slide shows the reserves and proposed work plan contingency. So the projected for the end of this fiscal year would be 200,675. The reduced, we don't anticipate using quite all of the work plan budget in this fiscal year. And the other difference is that there was no conference or staff workshop. So there was a significant cost savings in that for those budget accounts. So the difference would be 64,425. The balance in our reserves at the beginning of this fiscal year was 81,000. Our target reserves balance per policy and commission direction is 106,750. So the remainder, cash remainder at the end of the year will be 38,715. That is the amount that we would propose for putting into the work plan contingency. And then if you go to the green column under the preliminary budget, again, apportionment fees remain at 265. The reserves balance per policy would be 116,000. So that the cash remainder at the end of the year would be 30,815 for the proposed work plan contingency.
Question?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jerry.
I believe that our 2021-22 budget was deliberately increased to cover or put more additional monies into our reserves. So of the 38,715, wasn't some of that supposed to go into reserves to build it back up?
Yes. The budget, let's see, the budget reserves, the reserves should be 25% of the operational costs, and then the legal reserves were bumped up to 50,000. So that's what makes up the 106,750. Because the annual budget for this current fiscal year is 227,000. We project we will use 200,000 of that. So the remainder is the 38,700.
Okay. So we overestimated our budget last year by 38,000.
And yes, part of that is because we don't anticipate going through the whole work plan budget. And the other part of that is the cost savings from remote meetings and the cancellation of the conference and staff workshop.
Okay, thank you.
The comparison of similar LAFCOs, you can see where Mendocino sits as far as the apportionments and the budget. Of note, the top three, Butte, El Dorado, and Nevada LAFCO, all have employees rather than contract staff. Shasta, Humboldt, and Mendocino, of course, have contract. So the next steps for the budget are to schedule a proposed budget and work plan for a public hearing before the commission. And in anticipation of that, the proposed budget is sent to all of the member agencies. And depending on staff direction, that could be scheduled for either April 4th or May 2nd. We are required to adopt a final budget and work program by mid-June. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, the proposed motion would be to set the budget work program public hearing. I would recommend May the 2nd to give the different entities who are going to receive notice of their apportionment time to meet with their jurisdictional boards and come back in time by May 2nd to address the commission on our budget if necessary. And I'll open it up to questions and for a potential motion to the commission.
I have a question, Chair.
Yes.
So there's a lot to go over, and I've been comparing it to the previous budgets and stuff. So I just want to keep my questions at bay for now, but I do want to probably have some more particular questions for staff either in April or May. So I'll just leave that open. I'm not convinced that this is the correct one just yet.
Would you be willing to, during the interim period, direct questions to staff prior to the commission meeting?
Sure, I would like to, yes.
Absolutely do so, please.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Schlater.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make this really brief. I mentioned this at the executive committee meeting, and it's a point of education and clarification for those of you that aren't following, kind of regional, statewide planning issues. There's really a shift occurring, as Commissioner Ignacio pointed out in his comments on one of the previous items, where it used to be, 10 years ago, all the planners left cities and counties and went to consulting agencies. Now we're seeing the reverse happen. And what I wanted to say here is you had that one slide about, not good, but fast, et cetera. Increasingly what we're seeing, primarily with some of these gripping issues that are facing our regions, is that consultants, they used to be good and fast, but now they're good and not fast and still not cheap. So it's just something we're experiencing with some of the consultants we've been working with in the last year or so. So I just wanted to pass that on to the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, and turn it back over to commissioners for questions. Possible motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the recommended action for the May 2nd date so that there's time for collaboration with the other agencies and commissioners that have additional questions.
Thank you.
Second. I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded, and go ahead, Glenn.
So this seems really consistent with what I'm expecting as we're coming out of the COVID debacle. We are going to see more activity and a lot of questions needing to be answered, and especially with our priorities for trying to build affordable housing and provide services in the Ukiah Valley, if not elsewhere in the county. I think a little more robust budget is certainly a prudent idea, and I think we will have other issues that LAFCO will probably need to take up.
And my comment would be, I appreciate in the work program during this last year, during the drought and the year prior, questions on especially the water districts, questions that haven't been asked through our MSR program to date are now necessary to be asked. And I think this would lead to better coordination and understanding by the public as to how our area water agencies are responding to these conditions. And so I appreciate the going into an inland and a coastal approach to an overview, knowing that all these water agencies have their original MSRs, which always lay the groundwork and generally simplify the 5-year review program. In this case, it's felt that to work with all the agencies and coordinating their drought responses and answering how that's occurring throughout the landscape of Mendocino County is critical at this time. So I do think this work program will help us address that and illustrate it to the public at large. With that, I'll turn it back to Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, thank you. I just would like to bring up what I brought up at the executive committee meeting and what I've heard today about, well, I got outvoted on the using consultants, and we're using more of our staff time. One of the things I brought up at the executive committee was adding more people to our staff, which would include increasing our budget and or providing the existing staff, they're working part-time to maybe put in more hours. Those are the two items that I brought up at the executive level, and I'm just bringing that to the commission's, full commission's information for them. But it looks like I said earlier in my earlier comments, that I don't believe 27,000 is going to take care of the the SOI and MSR for the city and the Sand District, but maybe it's time, and I've always advocated lower budgets, but maybe it's time to increase our budgets to actually get the more work done. I'm concerned about that. And those are the questions I'll be posing to our staff once in the next month or two, so we can bring back for maybe full discussion. But yeah, it is complicated, as I've told them. This is very complicated stuff. So do we need to, if we're not going to use consultants, let's increase our budgets then to cover it.
And I think the intention of the set aside for overages in the work plan potentially is part of that resolve and answer to your concerns as expressed in the past and currently. Go ahead, Mari.
Well, I have a feeling, and I want to ask staff if they could verify whether it's true or not, that we have a bottleneck. It's just all this pressure to resolve issues, particularly in the Ukiah Valley, and that we're going to have to put a lot of resources of our staff time into resolving it. But once those work out, and we'll be able to have a lower, there won't be as much work for staff to do, but we have to get through this bottleneck, and then we can get through to a more regular schedule and maybe more abbreviated SOIs and MSRs. But it's just going to take a big effort in the short term, and I feel like we're finally, meaning LAFCO is finally equipped to accomplish this. And but I think that it won't require as much money as soon as we pass through this pressure point. Does staff see that similarly?
Go ahead, Uma.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodin. That was much more well said than my flubbing of the work plan presentation there. I apologize, there was someone pounding on the door. That's correct. So when I was talking about the comprehensive versus the abbreviated, these are comprehensive municipal service reviews and sphere updates for the city and the sanitation district. And the conditions of the drought and the water supply are going to necessitate comprehensive studies of the water districts as well. And there's, whether it's support amongst the agencies or consolidation efforts that, their state water board is involved as well. So these studies are going to take a lot of coordination and time, but it will be hugely beneficial to LAFCO to have the funding available to do those comprehensive studies and develop those relationships. It's a similar, as we're seeing with the sanitation district and the city, where we're working and coordinating and collaborating with those agencies, building those relationships. It's going to be a much better process when we bring the water districts into that collaboration as well, and figure out the issues that are being faced in the Ukiah Valley, as well as between the water districts on the coast as well. So yes, the intent would be to do good, strong studies this round, and then especially when you're looking at agencies like the city of Ukiah, it doesn't necessarily necessitate a huge comprehensive review every 5 years. There is one of the things that we've been talking about at the staff level is developing a checklist so that we can say that we have reviewed those spheres with at the 5-year mark, but in that supported by that checklist, what level of additional review is needed at that time. So in the future, building on the comprehensive reviews, we don't anticipate that the subsequent reviews will necessitate as much budget and time.
Okay. Commissioner Ward, you're muted.
Uma, you brought up the water districts again. Under those reviews and studies, are we going to be talking about consolidation as well?
Consolidation was a determination and a recommendation in the previous MSRs and sphere updates for those the agencies, the water districts in the Ukiah Valley area, and we would definitely be looking at that again. We have been talking with the State Water Board as well, and to coordinate that information with them, and to they will be addressing drought-related issues and looking at the provision of water services in the Ukiah Valley, across the state, but in the Ukiah Valley as well. So we'll be coordinating with them on that, and then bringing those recommendations forward to the commission.
Because it is our goal to provide efficient public services, and one of that could be the consolidation. So I just want to bring that up.
It could be, and another purpose for doing a good comprehensive MSR and sphere update is to support those, support the efforts of not just LAFCO, but other state and local agencies towards that end, if that's appropriate.
Go ahead, Glenn.
So this is a little bit of a sidebar, but right now there also is a study being conducted by the county to take a look at sort of reestablishing the Mendocino County Water Agency, not so much to necessarily run things, but to have a coordinated effort for grant funding and such that is getting increasingly more complicated when we think about the infrastructure we're trying to provide, like acquire the water resources from the Potter Valley Project, raising Lake Mendocino Dam, consolidating water companies. My dream is that we'll be water secure from Talmadge to Redwood Valley with one big pipeline that the smaller districts can use. But these are all things that I think climate change and our drought are really bringing on quickly. So I'm going to make sure that the consultants contact UMA if they haven't already to have input from her.
Thank you.
We all appreciate that. Further questions from commissioners? We're looking for a motion to set the budget and work program. Oh, we have the
Already
motion
have
in
done
a
that.
second. Yes, we do. So call the question, Clerk Meadows.
Okay, Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
Yes.
Commissioner Frohnberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty,
Yes.
Chair Orth.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
thank you for that. Okay, we're moving on to 8A. I believe. Are we on 8A?
Yes.
No,
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
then. So applications and workload, go ahead, Uma.
Thank you. So this starts on page 58 of your agenda packet. The city of Ukiah, this is under active proposals. The city of Ukiah has submitted a revised application for the annexation of city-owned properties. The application submittal updates the previous one that was submitted in 2021, pretty much a year ago, and clarifies information and information needs that were raised during the initial referral of that application. So we have distributed that and are waiting for agency comments on that and starting the processing of that application. Still on file are the city of Ukiah's detachment of sanitation district served areas. These and 2 pre-applications, both for annexation of areas north of the city of Ukiah, so in the Masonite Ford Road area, one by the city of Ukiah and one by Millview County Water District. There are potential future proposals by the city of Ukiah for annexation of the Western Hills property. We don't have a timeline on that. The Elk Community Services District we are anticipating a proposal for activation of latent powers, and I understand that we can expect that in the next month or 2. And then we're also working with the county on the County Service Areas 3 activation of latent powers, and we have been meeting with county staff on that regularly, in working through the sphere update for the CSA as well as the activation of latent powers. what those powers would be and the process for that. There is two attachments to this staff report. Attachment 1 is the summary table of the activity for future proposals, and that's on page 60, and then the work plan updates on page 61. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Ward?
Sorry, taking up so much time today.
Not at all. Again,
I-
it's important that we use this meeting for any questions by commissioners to staff and to the public as well. So please never hold back. Thank you.
Thank you. So Uma, at our executive committee meeting, I believe you made the comment that you couldn't really move forward as much as you'd like with the MSR SOI for the city until the general plan update was completed, correct?
We can start our MSR sphere update and move it along as quickly as we can. I think the timing issue is the CEQA document for the general plan update. So we don't know when exactly that will move forward. They have started it already. So it is, according to city staff, they anticipate the process being wrapped up by the end of this calendar year. So
Yeah,
we would hope to track with that.
That's my point. They did say it'd be the end of December before they'd have that completed. But that's 9 months from now. And what can we do in the meantime while you're waiting for all these? Can we push ahead on some other MSRs, SOIs?
Yes, so we will be working on the city and the sanitation district MSRs and sphere updates. We would expect those to track along at about the same time, on the same timeline. It is possible to move ahead with the MSRs and do the adoption of those MSRs and then follow up with the sphere update with the CEQA document for the general plan update. So those could be adopted separately. That is one option. And then, or we could get it to the point where we can, as far as we can, pending CEQA review and start work on the others. So the water district MSRs.
Okay, question number 2. There was a SOI policy that we were trying to develop, and I believe looking back at our minutes that we agreed to continue that policy, but that was over a year ago. We really need to get that back on the front burner again and get that policy developed. Or have we ever already developed it? I'm not aware that we have.
No, that one was delayed. Again, there was a lot of back and forth between the public. So the city of Ukiah and the sanitation district in particular had concerns with that policy. So we do need to revisit that again and start have another policies and procedures committee meeting.
It also had to do with indemnification that the city didn't want to participate in. So anyway, I think that needs to be brought back forward because this is an important factor. Third question is on the CSA 3. I would also like to get, if we could, a monthly update of what you do discuss, because that's a pretty important MSR that's going forward. And I'd like to know how we are proceeding with that, because again, this has been going on for about a year and a half. And I know there's other factors involved and with tax sharing and whatnot, but it'd be nice to know what kind of things you're talking about. So thank you. That's all I had, Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Roden.
Thanks. I'm wondering if you have a map handy of Millview's sphere, because I'm looking at on page 59 of the pre-application to annex areas of Masonite properties and how that intersects with efforts to determine the city's SOI, because we don't want to have overlapping SOIs. But I don't know what exactly the map looks like. And are we going to try to finish determine the city's sphere before considering the annexation for Millview, or are they what?
These are excellent questions and really gets to the importance of the coordination that's going on between the agencies right now in preparation for these sphere updates for the city and the sanitation district. The Millview Water District's sphere was last updated in 2016. A portion of the area is, well, it is, I think the area is included in their sphere, I believe. So it is something that needs to be reviewed again, especially in light of the conditions of the drought and what impacts that has had on the district and their ability to provide services. So these are all questions and issues that are being discussed in those coordination meetings and the ad hoc committee meetings. And this is where it's really important for that groundwork to happen before we start to consider, the commission starts to consider these applications.
And I'm also aware that Millview Water District has made significant changes just since their last review. So that will come forward through that process as well. And on the CSA issue, I would speak to Supervisor Commissioner McGorty on the water agency side of things. I think Brook Trails generated a study and, a letter requesting that the water power be adopted, not only to service interties between water agencies throughout the county where those interties transverse over county territory, not in the agency territories, and that the CSA overlays through the water power could be beneficial as a companion to the engagement of a Mendocino water agency.
Thank you for that. I did not know that, so I appreciate that little tidbit of information.
You're welcome. Further, Mr. Slater, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just another point of clarification. I know, like, talking about general plan updates, first of all, general plan update happens once every 20 years. So probably many of the commissioners have not seen a general plan update actually occur, or maybe one or two, if that. Just clarifying here, the MSR, I think Uma had mentioned she was waiting until after the commission gave direction on that. So the commission has given direction today, and we have set up bi-weekly meetings between staff at the city and CALAFCO staff, and I think Sand District has set up the same type of bi-weekly meetings. So in these is when we'll start developing a schedule and start crossing things off our to-do list. And I just want to make sure that you all understand that, like an MSR, for example, it's mostly data collection, research on services, and actually a lot of that information has already been collected for the city. We had a research on a background information document that we collected as part of the general plan update about a year ago. I was talking to our planning staff last week, actually, and they said, Craig, we think we have most of the information already for the MSR, so it shouldn't be that difficult to actually prepare that. Then the other part of this is the SOI, and you really need to see some kind of a policy directive and an understanding of what's going to occur in the valley to understand how to craft your SOI. So that's what we'll be doing with the land use element of the general plan. All of these things are happening right now. We have a joint alternatives workshop that we have scheduled with the city council and planning commission in April. So it's happening, as kind of as we speak here, and we won't actually be waiting until the general plan is adopted to start the MSR and SOI. It'll be occurring simultaneously. Is really, when Uma and I were talking about this, kind of like, yeah, this is really, in many ways, how it should happen, because you want your policy to guide as well as the pressing issues of the day, whether it's climate change, drought, housing. You want that to kind of guide what the best provision of services is. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner comments, questions? So this is an informational report. Uma, are you finished, or you have anything further to say?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you for that report and discussion. And with that, we'll move to 8B, correspondence. Uma?
The only correspondence we have is the Board of Supervisors last week, I believe it was last week, had an item on their agenda relating to the next steps for implementing CSA 3 Zone of Benefit pilot project for the Sherwood Firewise community. And they had a request to direct county staff to proceed with filing an application, but also to start a ballot process. So LAFCO provided comments, staff provided comments asking for a delay in that so that they could align the process for activation of the power first. And then the election would be secondary to the application processing and the actual activation of that power. So that letter is included in your agenda packet on page 64. We did submit this letter to the Board of Supervisors, but we had talked about it first with Deputy County Counsel and Mr. Dashiell, the Department of Transportation Director, as well as Steve Dunnicliff, the Deputy CEO. So we've been coordinating closely with those individuals in representatives of the county. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Yes, I would just say I ask that this letter be added to the agenda just in case there would be public comment or wish to speak to this, because LAFCO had to insert itself to make sure the process meets the requirements so that nothing gets tripped up by going too fast or too far forward. As we know, fire issues throughout the county and throughout the state are tantamount of public concern. And the CSA formation of powers can be critical to the way counties and county supervisors respond to areas requesting higher benefit levels to respond to those issues. And there are still questions through our review process, I think, whether emergency private road work would be better done under fire authority, latent power, rather than transportation based upon applying tax dollars to a private road system, versus which under fire emergency operations is commonly done. And contracts could be let to transportation agencies or CAL FIRE to do the work. So these are issues that haven't been brought to either this commission or, I would say, even the Brick Trails Board. So consultation, coordination, as usual, this is very critical to moving these issues forward. I know there are supervisor commissioners who have interest in this for their communities. And so we need to do it right. We need to get everything aligned, and then we should be able to allow I believe once latent powers are adopted, LAFCO is pretty much out of the way, other than MSR review every 5 years. Is that correct, Uma?
I think we're still working through the details on what establishing those potentially establishing spheres over the areas that would receive those services. So rather than it may not be appropriate to activate that power for the entirety of the district, which is county-wide, minus 3 of the 4 cities, Point Arena not included in that. So I think we're still working through how best to establish where those powers would be applicable. And so there is the potential for sphere updates or sphere amendments to establish those areas. But again, still working through the details with our legal counsel and county counsel as well.
Yes, Matt.
Uma, I think I heard you say that 3 of the 4 municipalities are outside of the CSA and that Point Arena is contained within the CSA. Is that correct?
Correct.
What is the impetus for that?
When the CSA was established, it was essentially over the Point Arena area, and I'm sure that Commissioner Ignacio can speak more to that. But when later on in the coming decades, they expanded the CSA, and when they did that expansion, it became countywide with the exception of Ukiah, Willits, and Fort Bragg.
Pat, would you like more on that then?
If you could send it to me in email if you want, but it was just interesting that one of the incorporated cities is different than the other three.
Well,
Actually,
I'll just give you a nutshell on
Yes, please do.
it was mid 80s, and we need to establish an ambulance service. Point Arena falls within a geographical location that they have the state's longest ground transport to a trauma center in excess of 2.5 hours. We needed to get a tax-based district established, and by using the CSA as a mechanism, we were able to do that for the southern part of Mendocino County, and then we joined up after that in the mid-90s. I think it was 1994. The Coast Life Support District was established, and it goes up just below Elk and down into Sonoma County, and it's a standalone special district under the Department of Transportation. When that happened, rather than closing the CSA, as Uma said, the county expanded, excluding the other 3 cities and the exclusion zone that is now Coast Life Support District on the south coastal county. And it's been dormant ever since.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
And before I go to you, Glenn, I would just like to say that learning about how to utilize CSAs is fairly new here in Mendocino County. So I'm looking very forward to the draft moving forward for comment, because I'm sure it will illustrate to many of us factual information that currently is not out there for us. Go ahead, Glenn.
So we've applied for a grant through CAL FIRE Fire Safe program for planning for the potential of emergency ingress egress from the East Hills. And if that comes through, this is really critical information, because we'll need to coordinate with LAFCO for the latent powers issue. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
Well, we would need more information about whether or not it's actually being done through the CSA, or whether it's being done through the county, another agency or department.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an important distinction to make, and one that not everything. The county has a lot of powers on their own, so whether or not it goes through the CSA is something that needs to be first determined.
I see. Well, we're kind of looking at Brook Trails as the model, so we'll be. I'm sure this is something that will come up in discussion.
Yes, and that's why it was pulled back by this letter, so that we can have that full discussion and all of us become educated as to the do's and the don'ts for CSAs here in California and at the county level. So thank you, staff, for that letter to make sure that we're in compliance with a process that will end up with a resolve that benefits the community at large. Any further questions on this correspondence or comments? Public? I'll wait 10 seconds.
I don't know if Marcia wants to speak more to the CSA thing, if there's anything I've missed.
Marcia, would you please speak to it?
No, I think that Uma did a good job of summarizing, the challenges and some of the things we need to tease apart, whether or not the county already has an existing power, where they could provide a service more readily rather than using the CSA. And I just think that the pullback was a good thing, because we do have some things to sort through, so that it can be done in a way that actually achieves the outcome I think that, one of the things that we started to have concerns about is that particularly for the roads, the emergency access roads, there were some issues that needed to be sorted out before, moving forward to that next step. So, yeah, I think Uma did a great job of summarizing the issues.
Thank you. And with that, let's see our next item. We'll move on then. If there's no further comments needed or requested, then let's go ahead to the executive officer. Excuse me, 8C CALAFCO Business and Legislative Report.
Thank you. This will be brief. This is on page 65 of your agenda packet. We did sharing the news that CALAFCO does have a new executive director, Renee LaRoche. She started at the beginning of February and has worked with Pamela Miller, a previous executive director, throughout the month of February. And then she has now transitioned into the position full time as of March 1, and Pamela has stepped back. So she has reached out and she's ready to engage and already deep into legislative issues and advocating for LAFCOs. Also in the agenda packet is the ALGC legislative summary for information. I won't go into that, but so that concludes what I have for CALAFCO this month.
Okay, any questions from commissioners? Any members of the public wishing to speak to this? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Executive Officers Report 8D.
Thank you. We've been responding to a number of inquiries this month. We've been speaking with some folks on the South Coast regarding Mendocino County Waterworks District number 2, which is also known as the Anchor Bay Sewer District. We have found that our office records are very sparse on this district, so we have been gathering information and learning more about that agency and in responding to those requests for information. So that will be an agency that will come forward to the commission with more information in the future. We've also been assisting the City of Point Arena staff with information about the Point Arena Waterworks Company, which is a private water company that does serve the city. We did have it in our mutual water company report that we did a few years ago. And as we do MSR updates, we'll include more information about that agency. The other thing that we've been fielding a lot of calls about the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District, particularly with concerns regarding their board management. And so we've been responding to those and coordinating with other agencies on that district. And I'm sure there will be more on that agency in the future. And that's all I have for our executive officer's report.
Questions for the executive officer? Go ahead, Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, at our executive meeting, we did discuss the Mendocino Coast Health District, whether they were profitable or not. Have you checked into that yet?
I did look into that, and it appears that they are still operating in the red. And I will, once we distribute the budget, I will also discuss that with the auditor and the assessor's office to make sure that that's assessed in the apportionment assessment.
Can you, maybe the newer commissioners don't realize that we're not receiving apportionment fees from them. Can you explain why?
There's a provision in the CKH that says that healthcare districts that are operating in the red are not required to pay apportionment fees to LAFCO. So for quite some time, that agency has not paid any apportionment fees to Mendocino LAFCO. It is assessed every year when the auditor does the assessments, the apportionment assessments. And analysis. So they do take a look at that, but it's been so long that I will certainly remind them to take another look at that in light of the fact that they have shifted their operations so substantially.
Yeah, I was on the LAFCO when they dropped out, but it was a big hit to LAFCO. I think they were paying upwards to $35,000 a year in apportionment fees.
It would significantly decrease the rest of the special districts apportionments. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, the districts are well aware of the economic impacts of our apportionment fees, and having the health of the district, hospital district on the coast is, of course, very important to all of us who love recreating on the coast. And so hopefully their ship will be uprighted in the future, but we are getting a lot of calls. Okay, further questions by commissioners? Any questions of staff by our public is still here with us? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to committee reports. And let's see, Uma, you want to report out the executive committee issues that we resolved or didn't resolve, whatever?
Actually, Mr. Chair, you've traditionally requested that I keep notes on a lot of
Oh,
that.
good. Well, then, please.
I would definitely fall back on Uma to provide anything that I'm leaving out. But
Okay.
on the 3rd of March, we attended the executive committee meeting, Mr. Chair, myself, and the treasurer with Uma, Analyst Larkin, and we had guests of Wing C. Fox from the Sand District and Craig Schlatter from the city. And we went over basically everything that was presented for you today to consume in this agenda. We made some tweaks in the recommendations, and the XO was able to carry those out efficiently. Not much else to report, and that's where I'm going to fall back on Uma. We did not have a closed session report on, and that's my report, Chair.
Thank you. Uma, do you wish to add anything?
No, Commissioner Ignacio covered it well. I have nothing to add.
And Commissioner Ward, do you have anything to add?
Well, it's a lot more detail, but I think you summarized it pretty well. There was a lot of things we discussed, but I think I brought up most of my issues today.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to commissioner reports. Open it up to commissioners to make a report on their activities that they wish to bring forward to the commission.
Did the work plan ad hoc committee meet? No. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question under the committee report, or excuse me, from are we on commissioner reports?
We are, but if you need to go backtrack, that's fine.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I just want to get an update on the status of electronic signatures. I think we approved that several months back, but I haven't seen that happen yet.
We did approve the electronic signatures policy, and what we have not done yet is determine whether or not we can do electronic signatures for checks. So that is on our list, and we can report back on that next month.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Yes, Matt, go ahead.
Not necessarily LAFCO business, but I forwarded a water condition report to UMA for dissemination to the board, to the members of the commission. For those of you that don't realize it, we are now entering year 3 in a severe drought, and we can. I think it's time for everybody to continue with their proactive activities for saving water at this point. The coasts are going to be hit enormously hard this year, and as we all know, we had to do some wrangling to get water to needed areas over there. So be advised.
Yes, and again, good that our work plan will be looking at the water provision throughout the county through the water districts. We know Fort Bragg has added a desalination plant that apparently works with brackish water rather than ocean water. So those kind of details will move forward, but that is a plus for the coast. I can tell you that here in Brick Trails, at my house, we've received a little over 42 inches of rain, and our general manager estimates we have a 440-day supply of water based upon our usage caps that we put out to each meter. And we also just are working on 2 ordinances that will look to high volume users and ways to bring them in line monetarily, at least, to try to establish proper behavior of water use during these times. And that would be my report out of what we're working on. Oh, one other item, the state is supporting our moving forward with studies to look at taking our sewage flow during dry periods and reconstituting it to domestic water use. So that's a project important for Brick Trails in the future, especially as we are still a center of workforce housing for Mendocino County. And with that, I'll turn it over to Glenn.
Just a real quick update. So we've been on suspension of water restrictions along the Russian River from the State Water Resources Control Board because things look promising and we're hoping we'd go back to more normal water use. So they are putting their emergency regulations effective again on March 15th. I haven't heard what exactly is going to happen, how they're going to stage those, how the little bit of water that we have is going to be appropriated. And Lake Mendocino is in a little bit better shape than last year. Lake Pillsbury is in much better shape. Problem is that they're not generating power at Potter Valley, so there's not as much water coming through. We're only getting about 45 cubic feet per second instead of normally if power is to be generated to be about closer to 270 cubic feet per second. So the Eel River water situation is still not very good as far as our local water supply.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Well, thank you, staff. And oh, Matt, did you have something?
Yeah, I was trying to formulate it in my head, but to answer Mr. McGordy's statements, the state hasn't actually decided on one of there's 3 options out there. You could go to our website, Russian River Flood Control, and see the 3 different options on how the state will move forward with a portion, well, doling out the water, and it's either an equal basis for everybody. It's going to follow water rights, and then there's another option that I can't speak of off the top of my head, but there's no clear answer at this point in time.
Okay, I missed the meeting that they had, so I guess you must have attended it and heard the discussion.
Okay. Any further reports from commissioners? If not, then we can go to adjournment.
Move to adjourn, Chair.
Motion has been made.
Second.
We don't need a second to adjourn.
Oh,
Fortunately.
good. Thank you, everybody.
So thank you all. Be well. And thank you all for your inputs, your questions, and your public service. Thank you very much.
Donnie, hang on the line for a minute. I got a question for you. Next,